All right, so this is part 2. So what we're looking at is the inside of my very dusty and dirty, oh man, that's so dirty, Hot Rod Deluxe. So I figured I'd make a part 2. So we'll go through all this stuff here. Well, maybe not, because that'd take forever, but you can see how it's all wired up anyway. So there's your switches, your capacitors. Now, a little note: if you do not know anything about electricity, volts hurt, amps kill. And there's lots of stuff in here that can kill you. So even unplug, some of these capacitors will hold a charge. So never grab anything with your hands. Just, you know, if you're not savvy around electricity, probably best not to open up your back of your amp. But this way you can get a better look. Before we get to the tubes, well, no, okay, we'll go to the tubes. So right here we got this 312AX7 tubes, which are a very bright, lively tube, which gives you a lot of gain. They saturate really well. And this rubber or foam, I guess you could say, piece is just an anti-vibration, because this amp does actually produce a fair amount of vibration, even though it only has a single 12-inch speaker in there. There's a lot of low end. It does tend to vibrate. So you got both channels here, and then I guess this is the boost tube. So you got like clean, dirty, boost, right? And here we got the groove tubes, the venerable, loud, obnoxious, in your face, hurt you, push little old ladies down the stairs, societally degenerate 6L6 tubes. These are the GT6L6B. There's a few versions of 6L6 tubes, but the 6L6 tube is the tube that grabs the EL34, smacks him in the head, pushes him down the stairs, and says, "Get out of here, wimpy." This is the tube that takes the 5581 and tells him, you know, bad things about him to make him cry. This is the tube that, like, will fry your eggs while they're still in the shell. Yeah, these things are very, very aggressive. They're an interesting tube because they're very, very out. They give the sound very, very out front. And the interesting about these tubes is these are all original. These are 19 years old. Yeah, it's time to change them, I'm pretty sure, but you know, they still work. Here's your speaker output. You have 2 of them. So you can run, if you're sane enough, you can run a big cabinet like this here and that speaker at the same time, which sounds incredibly good. Not a big fan of that speaker. I'm thinking, you know, when I get the service done on this thing, it still functions, it still works, but it, you know, tube amps do need a little bit more maintenance. I'm trying to think of something better to put in there, because that speaker, which was originally called the Black Widow, now the newer versions come with the A-type, which is a much nicer sounding speaker, but it's still kind of you got to think of when we talk about who this amp is designed for and all that. You know, this amp it's a very versatile amp, but it's an extremely simple amp. And the problem you run into is, to get a lot out of it, it's kind of like you got to kind of play around with it within its limitations. So anyway, these are the tubes. That's what they look like. I'll get you another angle if I can. There you go. Those are your pre-tubes. Many older amps never had. Spider comes free. That is a weird looking spider. I think he's still alive. Yeah, or maybe that's just a shell. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So now that you got your tubes, this little button right here, or wheel, which I will not touch because I have it set, is your bias. Your bias for your tube saturation. And what it does is, if you're playing with a really anemic single coiled guitar, Strats Tellys come to mind, and you can't get enough tube breakup, you can actually adjust this very slightly and it will increase voltage to the plate, which then makes your tubes run a bit hotter, which makes your amp break up sooner, which, you know, gives you more breakup. The downside is when you get more breakup, you get less headroom, meaning it'll break up before, you know, it won't stay clean as long. So that's the trade-off you make with a Hot Rod Deluxe, because even though you technically have 3 different channels, you really only have one. So you have to bias it so that if you want a clean channel, you want as much headroom as possible. If you want if you mainly play leads and you know, on the lead channel, you want to saturate as much as possible. So I bias my amp somewhere like 61 to 63, depending on the guitar. If the guitar is a little bit overkill, 58 to 61 is typically where I set the bias for myself. That said, there's a trick to biasing an amp. It's been a while since I've done it. They do, especially if you're gigging a lot, you know, these things don't stay in the same position, or sometimes the amps will just lose their bias and you have to rebias them again. So it's like if you find your amps kind of like not optimal, you have to redo that. So other than that, you don't touch anything else in here because you could die or you could damage. And if you die, that's fine, but you don't want to damage the amp, right? So, because you'll be the last to know about it anyway. So, yeah, so one last look at these groove tubes with the Fender logo on them. I'm probably going to swap them out for some JJs just because that's what everybody does. But I don't know, I'll do some research, see what tubes are recommended. Now, that said, yeah, I'll make a part 3 for the sissies who can't handle the 6L6s. Yeah, that's what I'll have to do.